A man was camping alone at a remote worksite in the desert when he noticed a shadow outside his tent. At first, he assumed it was one of his workers returning to camp, but as he looked closer, he realized it wasn't normal. He grabbed his camera and zoomed in. Standing outside the tent was a humanoid figure with an unusual bluish hue to his skin. The man began to pray, convinced he was looking at a jinn. What happened next is unknown. Even though the footage looks terrifying, it does feel a bit staged in the way it's filmed and framed. A man was near Canmore, Alberta, when he noticed something moving high across a distant mountain ridge. He kept his camera rolling as a dark figure appeared across the rocky terrain. As he zoomed in, it appeared to be moving upright, crossing the steep ridge with unusual speed and balance. The man believed it could be a Sasquatch, while others argued it was likely a bear. We'll likely never know for sure. 3-year-old Laura Bradbury disappeared from her family's campsite at Indian Cove Campground in Joshua Tree National Park, California on October 18, 1984. That day, Laura had walked with her 8-year-old brother to the campground's portable restrooms. For just a brief moment, he left her waiting outside while he went in. But when he came back out, Laura was gone. What followed was one of the largest searches the area had ever seen. More than 250 people searched the rugged desert landscape looking for any sign of the missing child. At one point, a bloodhound reportedly followed what appeared to be Laura's trail for nearly 2 miles before losing the scent. But despite the massive effort, no trace of her was found. After 3 days, the search was officially called off. As investigators worked the case, witnesses reported seeing a man in his 50s driving a metallic blue van near the campground around the time Laura vanished. A similar man was reportedly seen again hours later in another area not far from the park, but no arrests were ever made. Then, in 1986, hikers made a heartbreaking discovery near the park's western entrance. Human remains were found approximately 5 miles from Laura's campsite. Years later, advanced DNA testing confirmed they belonged to Laura. But even with that discovery, the mystery was never fully solved. Authorities were unable to determine exactly what happened between the moment Laura disappeared and where her remains were ultimately found. More than 4 decades later, no one has been charged in connection with the case. A man exploring a remote desert area filled with caves came across a small cave entrance. Suddenly, he spotted something inside. Curious but cautious, he slowly moved closer with a flashlight in one hand and a camera in the other, trying to get a better look into the darkness. As he approached the opening, something appeared to be staring back at him. A jet-black humanoid figure could be partially seen hidden inside the cave. The footage was originally shared in 2022, which means we can rule out modern AI video generation as an explanation. And from the footage alone, it's difficult to say for certain what was actually hiding in there. Reddit user AllTheInios23 shared a post after finding something strange while using OpenGuesser in La Paz, Bolivia near Moroy Street. The Google Maps location showed what looked like a body hanging in an open area. The user went back to the spot on Street View and confirmed it was still visible in the same position. Some said it was an effigy used in rural areas as a warning to thieves, meant to scare off criminals. Others suggested it could be part of local traditions where figures are displayed as a symbolic punishment or a deterrent. Someone was out in the desert at night when they spotted something terrifying. Standing in the distance was a strange red humanoid figure. At first glance, it almost didn't look real. The figure appeared red against the darkness and seemed to be wearing what looked like white pants. The sight was unsettling enough that the witness immediately began recording, and the footage spread online. People quickly started debating what they were looking at. Some labeled it a devil-like entity because of its unusual color and human-like appearance. Others suggested there was probably a more ordinary explanation. Unfortunately, the footage was too blurry and distant. But coming across someone who looked like that alone in the desert at night would be enough to make most people turn around and leave immediately. This mysterious clip was recorded by an unknown person at an unknown location. Reportedly, the person was outside when they came across an unusual cluster of dark, plant-like forms in the ground. The objects look small and tree-like at first, but instead of leaves, each one has a bulbous, sticky-looking top. When the person touches them with a stick, the structures react by retracting or shrinking inward, as if responding to contact. The footage shows several of them close together, all reacting in a similar way when disturbed, making their behavior hard to immediately categorize. Some think it could be a rare type of fungus or plant with a defensive response. But then, wouldn't we already know about plants like this? A person was driving through the desert at night when they saw this in the sky. Multiple orange orbs appeared in a straight line across the darkness. The lights seemed to form a pattern, with new orbs appearing while others faded, creating the impression of movement along the line. Was it just aircraft lights or satellites? Many believe the synchronized motion and fading pattern make it difficult to match with conventional explanations. What do you think? In July 2014, YouTuber RockMoons90 was camping in Mexico when he decided to hike the Ruta Aves trails with his camera gear. During the hike, a pickup truck passed by him twice. The second time, something felt off, so he grabbed his GoPro and hid it. Then, this happened. The armed man took his backpack and tripod. The hiker returned to his campsite and later contacted local authorities, who reportedly told him similar robberies had happened in the area before. Truly a scary experience. But all that for a backpack and a tripod. A woman named April Beth Pitzer disappeared after being last seen in Newberry Springs, California on June 28, 2004. At the time, April was trying to rebuild her life. She had recently moved from Arkansas to California, working as a caregiver while struggling with bipolar disorder and unstable living conditions. Shortly before she vanished, she admitted to her mother that she had stopped taking her medication and had been living between shelters and the streets. Despite the difficulties, April told her family she wanted to return to Arkansas and reunite with her children. According to reports, she planned to travel by bus. An acquaintance later gave her a ride to a bus station, but she never arrived at her destination. And after that, her family never heard from her again. As the months passed, investigators and volunteers searched for answers. Then, in remote desert mining areas near the Mojave Desert, personal belongings believed to April began turning up. Clothing and other items were reportedly found scattered across a wide area. Some of the discoveries were especially unsettling, with items allegedly located in abandoned mines and other isolated structures deep in the desert. But despite the findings, no clear evidence ever revealed exactly what happened to her. Years later, additional searches were conducted after reports of possible human remains being discovered near old wells and mining sites. Yet the mystery remained unsolved. To this day, no confirmed suspects have been identified, and no definitive answers have ever been given about April Beth Pitzer's fate. What should have been a journey home to see her children again, instead became a disappearance that has remained unanswered for more than 2 decades. 2 men in Venezuela noticed a bright white object hanging motionless in the sky and quickly started recording. As they zoomed in, the object appeared to have a smooth, capsule-like shape. It didn't seem to have wings, rotors, or any obvious means of propulsion. For several moments, it remained suspended in the distance without showing any clear movement. The longer they watched, the stranger it seemed. Then, suddenly, the object appeared to vanish from sight. At first, many people believed they were looking at something truly unexplained. But later, fact-checkers linked the same clip to a previously misidentified blimp, leading many to believe the object was far more ordinary than it initially appeared. Still, I can see why the footage got so much attention. The unusual shape and the way it seemed to disappear definitely makes it look stranger than a typical blimp. A group of friends had been exploring a remote desert area when they came across a cave. Curious about what might be inside, they decided to leave the main path and investigate further. At first, everything seemed normal. The area was quiet, with nothing but the sound of the wind moving through the desert. But as they continued exploring, they began hearing horrifying screams. The sounds were loud enough to immediately make them uneasy. Unsure of what they were hearing, they pulled out a camera and started recording. As the screaming continued, their curiosity quickly turned into concern. And before long, concern turned into panic. Whatever was making the noise seemed close enough that they no longer felt comfortable staying there. So they abandoned the exploration and headed back the way they came. To this day, they still don't know what caused the screams they heard that night. A taxi driver was driving late at night when he noticed something unusual on the side of the road. A man was standing completely still inside a perfect circle of lit candles. The driver slowed down to look, and within seconds, the situation changed. By the time the taxi passed, the figure was completely gone, leaving only the empty candle circle behind. Many think this is edited, but the setup itself also raises questions, since candle circles are often linked to rituals or symbolic acts in different traditions. So what if it is real? A woman in New Mexico was home alone late one night at her desert home when something outside her window caught her attention. She checked her security camera and saw this. A figure moving slowly through the darkness, lit only by the faint glow of the moon. At first it was clearly visible, but as she kept watching, something unsettling happened. The figure simply disappeared from the frame. Some people believe it could have been a camera glitch or a compression error, but if that's true, then there had to be someone out there in the first place, which raises an even more unsettling question. Who was outside her home that night, and why were they in such a remote location? Others think it could be something harder to explain, something that was never fully there to begin with. A Reddit user known as ArtNymphette shared a story from her boyfriend in Mexico about something he saw outside his house late at night. He was pulling up to his home, which sits at the base of a hillside, when he noticed a small pale figure near the slope. He described it as about 30 to 40 centimeters tall, moving on two legs that bent backwards, almost like a goat. He said it moved unnaturally fast, then suddenly disappeared into the hillside as if it had gone straight into the ground. He didn't think much of it until the next morning when he went back to check the same spot. There, he found a small stone statue sitting on the ground where the figure had been. Neither he nor his girlfriend recognized it, and they were certain it hadn't been there before. The area is also linked to local folklore about small humanoid creatures said to live in remote terrain. The statue is still reportedly there, and they haven't moved it since. What happened here? YouTuber UV Prajapati was out hiking alone on a deserted mountain when he started hearing strange noises coming from the distance. He stopped walking, and that's when he spotted it. Far away on the mountainside, a dark figure could be seen standing motionless.
Oh my God.
The unsettling sounds continued echoing through the area as he kept recording. But because of the distance and poor visibility, it was impossible to clearly identify what the figure actually was, whether it was a person, an animal, or something else entirely. The encounter left the hiker unsettled. A woman named Kelsey Pittman disappeared near Death Valley National Park in November 2024 under mysterious circumstances. Very little has ever been publicly released about why the 33-year-old was in the area to begin with. Authorities only confirmed that she had last been in contact with police in Utah before communication suddenly stopped. Months later, Her vehicle, a 2009 Chevrolet HHR, was discovered abandoned in a remote desert area off Highway 190 near Death Valley National Park. The area, known locally as the Pads or Slab City, is isolated and surrounded by harsh desert terrain. Investigators searched the area extensively using drones, cadaver dogs, rescue crews, and aerial support, but Kelsey was nowhere to be found. As months passed with no answers, many feared the worst. Then, nearly 9 months after disappearing, the Inyo County Sheriff's Office announced something unexpected. Kelsey Pittman had been found alive in Colorado. Officials released no details about where she had been, how she survived, or what exactly happened, out of respect for her privacy. A man was standing over a freshly dug grave in the late afternoon when a strange sound started coming from inside the hole. The man leaned in closer, trying to understand where it was coming from, but couldn't identify it. The sound continued in waves, making it hard to tell if it was something trapped underground or just an echo from deeper within the ground. Some believe it could be caused by underground movement, gas, or something natural in the soil. Others think the sound is too unusual and point to more supernatural interpretations. A man hiking in the desert captured a strange tube of light moving back and forth across the sky. The light looked like a suspended beam or streak, shifting smoothly through the air in a way that felt hard to explain. Some suggested it could be a rare atmospheric effect, such as light scattering through cloud layers or dust in the atmosphere. Others believed it might be an unusual reflection, a drone light, or some kind of artificial projection. What the fuck? Whether it was natural or not, it felt unreal, especially in such a quiet, empty location. A TikTok user known as Crazy Creepy Weird shared this video. Below the road was a deep valley with no visible safety barrier, and the route looked tight enough that even a small mistake could have serious consequences. Looking at that road winding along the cliff like that, would you trust the driver? In 1999, a man named David Parker Ray was arrested in New Mexico after a woman managed to escape from his property and flag down a passing car. What investigators discovered afterward would become one of the most disturbing criminal cases in FBI history. On Ray's property near Elephant Butte, police found a soundproof trailer he referred to as his toy box. Inside were chains, surgical tools, restraints, pulleys, and devices specifically designed for torture. Investigators also discovered a cassette tape, a recording Ray allegedly played for victims after they regained consciousness inside the trailer. The tape calmly explained what was going to happen to them. According to investigators, Ray had allegedly kidnapped women for decades, sometimes holding victims captive for months at a time. Authorities believed he may have assaulted as many as 60 women, though only a small number of victims were ever officially identified. What made the case even more disturbing was that no bodies directly connected to Ray were ever found. Investigators suspected victims may have been buried, dumped in nearby lakes, or hidden in remote desert areas, but the full truth was never uncovered. Ray died in prison in 2002 from a heart attack before further interrogation could take place. His accomplices, including his girlfriend and even his own daughter, received separate prison sentences for their involvement. To this day, the true number of victims remains unknown. A man was visiting a historical site when something suddenly made him stop. One of the stone tiles in a columbarium wall had been removed, leaving behind a dark opening in the structure. A columbarium is an ancient place used to store the remains of the dead, with small sealed compartments built directly into the walls. But as he walked past the opening, he heard something disturbing. Knocking sounds. Then, moments later, what sounded like muffled screaming coming from inside. It almost seemed as if someone was desperately trying to get out. The man immediately panicked, backing away from the wall while continuing to record the scene. A group of friends were on a trip through the desert when one of them noticed something moving inside their shoe. That's when they decided to record. Carefully, they pulled out a long insect, hidden deep inside, completely unnoticed until it started moving.
I'm like breaking a sweat.
Moments like that are a reminder of how easily something can crawl into places you'd never expect, especially in environments like the desert. So, if you found something like that in your shoe, would you ever wear it again without checking first? A farmer recorded footage of a strange creature moving around his property at night. It had unusually long limbs, very little hair, and a snout that didn't match any common farm or wild animal he recognized. For weeks he had been losing livestock without explanation. Every morning, animals were missing or found dead, and he never managed to catch what was responsible. When the footage surfaced, many immediately pointed to the chupacabra, a creature in folklore said to attack livestock in exactly this way. The appearance seemed to match descriptions people have shared for years. Some believed it could simply be a wild animal suffering from disease, which can cause extreme hair loss and drastically change its appearance. But I'm not convinced. The footage is very blurry, which often raises questions about possible editing or manipulation. A Russian biologist reported an unusual and concerning spread of a tick species appearing in regions of Russia where it wasn't commonly found before. The species, known as the hyaloma tick, behaves differently than typical ticks. Instead of waiting for a host to pass by, it actively moves toward it, detecting heat, carbon dioxide, and motion from a distance. In recorded footage, one of these ticks was seen moving across the ground directly toward a person filming. What made it more concerning was its link to serious illnesses, including Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, and its appearance in areas where it hadn't been seen before. Unlike ordinary parasites that wait for opportunity, this one appears to pursue it. And if something that small can actively come toward you instead of waiting, how would you even notice it in time? What a nightmare. Reddit user Substantial Layer 586 was camping alone on remote BLM land in the desert when something strange jolted him awake early in the morning. It was around 5 a.m. Still inside his tent, half asleep, he suddenly heard something strike the fabric right near his head. Then it happened again and again. Something was being thrown at his tent, hitting the exact same spot. At first he froze, listening. Then he quickly looked outside. Nothing. No people, no animals, just empty desert in every direction. Later he shared a photo of his campsite, and it raised even more questions. There were no trees above him, no cliffs, nothing that could have caused debris to fall from above. Some people suggested it might have been small animals. Others thought maybe rocks had been kicked loose somehow. But the repeated, targeted hits didn't feel random. It felt deliberate, like something or someone was out there in the dark, aiming directly at him. So the question is, what was really out there that morning? Two men investigating the source of mysterious booming sounds in a remote area made an unexpected discovery. A door welded directly into the side of a mountain. On their first visit, quad bikes appeared on the trail behind them. Not knowing who was following, they left the area, but they returned later. The entrance showed clear signs of frequent use, yet the door was shut from the inside, and behind it they could hear a machine running. They asked locals about it and were told the place was built by a man who believed he was preparing for an alien apocalypse roughly 7 decades ago. With help from some locals, they eventually got inside. What they found was just a hollowed-out section of rock. The locals considered the man who built it a madman, but if the place was abandoned, why were machine sounds still coming from behind that door? They couldn't shake the feeling that the locals weren't telling the full story. In Mexico, a team of explorers stumbled upon an odd object. It looked like a perfectly round carved stone. Many quickly linked it to the Bugosphere, a mysterious metallic-looking sphere that went viral online after claims it may have had unexplained origins. The carvings depicted aliens and otherworldly beings, but they didn't appear modern, more like something ancient that had been buried for years. Many believe it could be evidence of ancient alien contact. Maybe it's a hoax, maybe misinterpreted art, or maybe it's a piece of history yet to be revealed. A person was hiking on a deserted mountain trail when they noticed something in the distance. Partially hidden behind a rock was a dark figure, with what looked like glowing eyes staring directly at them. The moment felt off, unnatural. The way it appeared didn't quite make sense. Had someone placed something there, a prop meant to scare hikers? Either way, seeing something like that alone in a place that quiet is enough to make anyone stop in their tracks. So what do you think it was? A man walking through a remote desert area heard a strange purring sound coming from inside a cave. He moved closer to investigate, but as he approached the opening, he saw this. A creature inside with glowing eyes staring back at him from the darkness. The cave didn't appear to have a clear entrance large enough for anything easily to get inside. So how did it get in? Some suggested it could have been a mountain lion, and I think that's a good explanation. What do you think? A 76-year-old man named Mark Young set out on a solo camping trip along Bloody Basin Road, a remote stretch of rugged wilderness north of Phoenix, Arizona. Mark was an experienced outdoorsman who was familiar with the area and had gone on similar trips before. His family expected to hear from him after the trip, but when he failed to show up for a planned dinner the following day, concern quickly grew. Soon his vehicle was found near Bloody Basin Road, about 30 minutes from Black Canyon City. Many of his belongings, including his sleeping bag, had been left behind inside the car. As the days passed with no sign of him, search crews began combing the remote landscape. The area is known for its steep terrain, isolated canyons, and long stretches with little access to help. The kind of place where a single wrong turn can quickly become dangerous. Then, after 4 days of silence, the search finally got the news everyone had been hoping for. Mark was found alive. He was reportedly dehydrated, injured, and exhausted, but conscious and alert. Because of the difficult terrain, a rescue helicopter was flown in to reach him and transport him to a nearby hospital for treatment. Thankfully, this story ended with a rescue instead of a tragedy. A man in Kazakhstan noticed something strange beneath his feet. The rocks seemed making faint popping and cracking sounds, almost rhythmic, as he stood on them. One explanation points to natural causes. Temperature shifts between hot days and cold nights can cause rocks to expand and contract, creating cracking sounds. Others suggested underground water movement or pressure changes deep beneath the ground that can carry sound through rock layers. Even small, low-level seismic activity could create similar effects without being noticeable as an actual earthquake. Still, a very strange sound. A woman named Janelle Banda was camping with her father in Coconino County, Arizona, when something unexpected happened. Late at night, around 10:30 p.m., she walked away from the campsite and didn't return. At first, her father believed she might come back on her own, but as time passed, concern quickly turned into alarm. Search teams were called in and began combing the rugged terrain. For nearly 3 days, there was no sign of her. Then, she was finally found, at the bottom of a steep canyon. She had fallen nearly 400 feet, suffering injuries, dehydration, and exhaustion, but somehow she survived. Her rescue was described as nothing short of a miracle. A man exploring an abandoned house in the desert came across something strange while filming inside. The building appeared completely empty. While looking around, he noticed a narrow crevice in one of the walls. Curious, he pointed his camera toward the opening. That's when he saw it. Staring back at him from the darkness was a single eye. At first glance, it looked almost human. But the eye had a yellowish appearance, and the area around it appeared to be covered in dark fur. Whatever was hiding behind that wall, it definitely wasn't a person. Some viewers suggested it was probably a cat or another animal that had squeezed into the confined space. Others pointed out that the eye seemed unusually large and difficult to identify. Unfortunately, the video never reveals what was actually hiding there, and no follow-up explanation was ever shared. Two bikers were riding through the Russian mountains at night when they suddenly stopped near a large rock formation. It seemed like just another obstacle on the trail, but then they noticed movement. There were what appeared to be pale human-like figures with dark, hollow eyes. When the bikers pointed their lights toward them, the figures reacted immediately, scrambling away from the beams as if they were trying to avoid being seen. The footage, recorded on a bike-mounted camera, cuts shortly after the encounter. Some viewers believe the figures match descriptions of skinwalkers or similar folklore entities, while others think the video is staged or edited. If only the bikers had told us what happened next, or what they believed they actually saw. On April 11th, 2019, Kat Hamonter joined a group of hikers exploring Cañón del Diablo in Baja California, Mexico. The canyon is known for its stunning pools, waterfalls, and rugged desert scenery. Kat wasn't in the best physical condition that day. She had recently suffered several broken toes and was still dealing with ongoing health issues. About 10 minutes into the hike, she decided to stop and rest beside a pool of water with her dog, Tootsie, while the rest of the group continued toward a nearby waterfall. According to the hikers, the trip would only take about 90 minutes. Kat told them she would wait there until they returned. With Tootsie by her side, the arrangement seemed completely reasonable, so the group continued on. But when they returned to the spot where they had left her, Kat was gone. So was Tootsie. At first, nobody was overly concerned. They assumed she had simply headed back to the vehicles. But when they arrived at the trailhead, she wasn't there either. That's when the situation became alarming. A massive search operation followed. Rescue teams, volunteers, military helicopters, and tracking dogs searched the rugged canyon for days. Despite covering miles of terrain, no trace of Kat was found, and perhaps most strangely, no trace of Tootsie either. No clothing, no belongings, nothing. Years later, the mystery remains unsolved. A clip circulating online claims to show the tomb of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk who appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature ever discovered. According to ancient texts, Gilgamesh was a powerful ruler who embarked on epic journeys, battled mythical creatures, and searched for the secret of immortality. Because of his legendary status, the location of his real burial place has remained one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. Then, in 2003, reports emerged that archaeologists working near the Euphrates River in Iraq may have identified ancient structures connected to the lost city of Uruk. Some researchers even speculated that the area could be linked to the long-lost tomb of Gilgamesh, But the discovery was never fully verified. Years of instability, conflict, and looting in the region made further investigations extremely difficult. This clip is claimed to show that alleged resting place. However, there is no confirmed evidence that the structure shown in the footage is actually connected to Gilgamesh. Some believe it may simply be an archaeological site that was misidentified online. Others think the footage could be entirely unrelated to the famous king. And of course, some people really believe it could be connected to one of history's most legendary figures. The truth is, no confirmed tomb of Gilgamesh has ever been officially identified. Hikers had been coming to Telegraph Pass near Yuma, Arizona, thinking it was just another normal trail with open views and quiet desert air. But over time, something kept repeating itself. People would leave their cars parked at the trailhead, head out for a hike, and come back to broken windows and missing valuables. Deputies later noted the same pattern. One local said it no longer felt like a simple hiking spot, but a place where you had to constantly watch your surroundings, even before stepping onto the trail. But by the time warnings were shared, multiple incidents had already been reported in just a couple of weeks. In India, a group of miners reported seeing something unusual near a distant opening inside a cave. Standing in the darkness, a humanoid figure could be seen in the distance. But what immediately caught their attention was its head. It appeared to be glowing. The sighting quickly sparked discussion online. Some connected it to regional folklore, stories describing mysterious humanoid entities with luminous or glowing heads appearing in remote places. Others pointed to a much more grounded explanation. In underground environments, a miner's headlamp viewed from far away can easily create the illusion of a glowing head. Depth perception breaks down quickly, and your brain starts filling in details that may not actually be there. So what do you think the miners saw that day? A person wearing a headlamp, or something far more unusual hiding in the darkness of that cave? In Nevada's Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area, multiple hikers and climbers got into trouble across different parts of the desert. In one of the more serious cases, an 80-year-old hiker became separated from his group near the North Peak Trail after the group lost the path on uneven terrain. He ended up alone off-trail in the wilderness overnight before search crews located him the next morning. Rescue teams launched a coordinated search using helicopters and thermal imaging, eventually finding him dehydrated and cold, but alive. He was helped down the trail and taken for medical checks. At the same time, other incidents were unfolding in the same area. One climber suffered a fall and serious injury on a technical route, requiring a long rope-based extraction from high above the canyon floor, while another hiker slipped and broke an arm, and others were treated for dehydration. These are reminders that even a short hike in places like Red Rock Canyon can turn into a survival situation fast. This footage was captured while driving down a deserted road in the Western Sahara. Suddenly, a massive swarm of locusts appeared.
Again, locusts.
Within seconds, the insects began slamming into the windshield, covering the car almost completely. Despite the chaos, the driver chose to keep moving through it. What would you have done in that situation? Somewhere deep in the Superstition Mountains of Arizona, a hidden gold mine is said to exist. The legend centers around a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz, a man who would disappear into the mountains for days or even weeks at a time before returning with unusually rich gold unlike anything found in known mines nearby. The mountains themselves already carried a dark reputation long before Waltz arrived. Native tribes in the area warned that powerful spirits lived within the caves and valleys, and that outsiders who entered the mountains often never returned. Before his death in 1891, Waltz reportedly gave vague and contradictory directions about the mine's location to his neighbor, but he never revealed a clear path. And after he died, people began searching for the lost gold. One of the most famous cases happened in 1931, when a prospector named Adolf Ruth entered the mountains carrying what he claimed was a centuries-old Spanish treasure map. Months later, his body was discovered with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The map was missing. Over the decades, many others have vanished or died searching for the mine. From heatstroke, falls, snake bites, gunfights, and mysterious disappearances deep in the unforgiving desert terrain. Even modern technology like ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging has failed to locate anything hidden within the mountains. So after more than a century of searching, is the lost Dutchman's gold mine still hidden somewhere out there, or did Jacob Waltz take the secret with him to the grave? On March 16, 2026, a video was posted from the Utah wilderness. A man was hiking through a remote stretch of desert mountains when something inside one of the cliffs suddenly caught his attention. When he zoomed in, a large creature appeared to lift its head from inside a cave. It wasn't a bear, and it didn't resemble any normal animal he recognized. The figure seemed to have the body of a mammal, but features resembling a massive bird, far too large to be an eagle or hawk. Online, some theorists immediately began claiming it could be a griffin, a legendary creature described for thousands of years in ancient cultures like Egypt, Persia, and Greece. Stories often portrayed griffins as powerful creatures with the body of a lion and the head or wings of a giant bird. Some people believe those stories were purely mythological. Others aren't so sure. But honestly, the footage becomes a lot less convincing when you realize it was uploaded by a TikTok account called AI Experiment, which makes it far more likely that the creature was digitally created rather than something real hiding in the mountains. A man was hiking with his family in Chile's Limari Valley in 2025 when they noticed something reflective below them in the rocky terrain. When they focused on it, they saw a large metallic object sitting between the rocks, partially hidden near a formation. It didn't look natural, and it didn't resemble anything you'd expect to find in a remote desert. The area has been linked to multiple unexplained UFO-like sightings over the years, which made the discovery even more interesting. If it's still there is unknown, but I'm guessing it's not, as no more videos have appeared. A group of climbers were making their way down a cliff in El Dorado Canyon when they suddenly got stuck hundreds of feet above the ground. As the temperature dropped, they were left hanging onto the rock face with no clear way down. They stayed close together, trying to hold on while waiting for help. Rescue teams were called, and drones were used to locate them in the dark and guide rescuers from above. Without clear visibility, the rescuers had to rely on directions from the drone to reach the exact spot. The operation lasted around 6 hours, with rescuers lowering down equipment, bringing the climbers jackets, and helping them back up safely. All 3 climbers made it out without serious injuries, but the situation could have turned much worse. A group of 4 friends were hiking through the desert when, midway through the hike, one of them decided to send an update to family and friends and snapped this photo. Everyone replied happily, glad they were enjoying the trip and that everything seemed to be going well, until one person asked a strange question. "Are you guys alone out there?" Confused, the hiker quickly replied they had been alone the entire time. That's when the person pointed out something in the image. Standing farther up ahead, partially hidden in the distance, was what appeared to be a girl with brown hair wearing a white dress. Disturbingly, the group realized they had already walked past that exact area and never saw anyone there, which raised even more questions. If it really was just another person, why was she hiding from them? And why would someone be dressed like that deep in the middle of the desert? The image left the group unsettled long after the hike ended. In a remote corner of South Africa, a legend has haunted the Karoo for generations. Reddit user CommonUnlucky390 recently shared a thread compiling local folklore, rock art, and modern sightings. The Karoo is a sun-scorched semi-desert, one of the driest places on the continent, but locals whisper about something lurking in its deep rock pools: mermaids. The most famous story comes from May Ring Sport, a narrow mountain pass in the Swartberg Range. A dark-haired figure is said to inhabit the pools there, controlling the rain. When she's content, water flows. When angered, drought follows. A terrifying power in such an unforgiving land. Ancient sandrock paintings in the Klein Karoo show fish-tailed human figures. Anthropologists debate whether these depict real sightings, ritual symbols, or mythological water spirits passed down through oral tradition. The legend resurfaced in the 1990s after severe floods swept through Meiring Sport. Rumours claimed a mermaid had been carried away, with her remains there displayed in a museum. No evidence has ever been verified, yet the story endures. Even today, travellers report hearing sounds near the water, and locals speak of pale figures brushing long hair by the pools, vanishing when approached. The Karoo was once submerged under an ancient inland sea, and fossils of marine life still appear in the rocks, adding another layer to the tale. Are these mermaids ancient mythology shaped by a harsh environment, a memory of when the desert was underwater, or something stranger still, glimpsed in the pools of Meiring Sport? A man named Daniel Hernandez was reported missing after disappearing in California's Coachella Valley on December 22nd, 2025. According to his family, he was last seen near a stop along Highway 74 after traveling with a friend. At some point, he walked away from the area and disappeared into the desert. When he suddenly vanished, a search began across the vast desert terrain surrounding the area. Days passed with no sign of him. As the search stretched into more than a week, his family feared the worst. Then, on December 30th, the case took an unexpected turn. Deputies received reports of an injured man near Indian Canyon Trail and Highway 74. When rescue crews arrived, they confirmed it was Daniel Hernandez. Video later showed a rescue helicopter lifting him from the rugged landscape before transporting him to safety. He was taken to a nearby hospital in stable condition. According to his family, he was dehydrated and exhausted, and had very little memory of what had happened during the time he was missing. Officials later confirmed that a couple had spotted him on the ground and alerted authorities. Exactly how Daniel ended up in the remote desert remains unclear, and because he remembered very little about his time missing, many questions remain unanswered. Thankfully, he was found alive. But what happened during those missing days may never fully be known. During a hike through the desert, this man noticed something unusual in the distance. At first, he couldn't tell exactly what he was looking at. The object appeared aircraft-like and seemed completely out of place in the barren landscape. Curious, he decided to leave the trail and investigate. As he got closer, the object appeared to resemble some kind of unmanned aircraft or drone. It looked damaged and abandoned, as if it had been sitting there for quite some time. What made the discovery even stranger was that when the footage surfaced online, no government agency, company, or organization had publicly claimed ownership of it. Some people believed it could have been a military drone that crashed during a classified operation. Others thought it was more likely an experimental aircraft or privately owned drone that had simply gone unreported. So what do you think he found out there? Just ordinary wreckage, or something that wasn't meant to be discovered at all? Beatriz Flamini, a Spanish athlete, mountaineer, and cave explorer, emerged in April 2023 after spending 500 days living alone in a cave 70 meters underground near Granada, Spain. She entered the cave in November 2021 as part of a scientific project designed to study the effects of extreme isolation on the human mind and body. Throughout the experiment, she had no direct human contact, no natural light, no access to current events or the outside world. After about 2 months, she completely lost track of time. In fact, when researchers came to bring her out, she believed she had only been underground for around 160 to 170 days. To stay occupied, she spent her days reading, writing, drawing, knitting, exercising, and documenting her experience on camera. By the end, she had reportedly read around 60 books. One of the most difficult moments came when the cave was invaded by swarms of flies that laid larvae around her living area, leaving her surrounded by insects for a period of time. She also admitted to developing intense craving for foods she couldn't have, especially roast chicken with potatoes. During her isolation, she missed major world events, including the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, remaining completely unaware that either had happened. When she finally emerged back into the daylight, she said it felt as though almost no time had passed at all. In fact, her first reaction was surprise. The experiment was already over because she hadn't even finished reading one of her books. And perhaps the strangest part, after 500 days alone underground, she said she could have stayed even longer. Authorities in Arizona launched a major operation called Operation Desert Dawn after growing concerns about critically missing children from Arizona. Over the course of 3 weeks, U.S. Marshals and multiple agencies worked together to locate children believed to be in dangerous and vulnerable situations. The operation focused heavily on areas where missing child cases were especially concentrated. By the end of the mission, 31 missing children had been found. Among the cases were teenagers believed to be victims of trafficking, children struggling with homelessness and substance abuse, and even an 11-year-old girl with reported mental health concerns. One 17-year-old had reportedly been missing for over 18 months before finally being located. Officials described the operation as an effort to remove children from situations involving exploitation, abuse, and serious danger. Thankfully, every child involved was found alive. Someone was driving through the US when they looked up and saw something they couldn't explain. A green laser beam was shooting straight upward into the sky, but there was a gap in the middle that made it seem almost out of this world. There also weren't any major cities nearby for miles, which made people wonder what could have been causing the beam. It could have been almost anything, but no official explanation was ever given, so no one really knows what it was. Deep within the ruins of Hattusa, the 3,000-year-old capital of the ancient Hittite Empire, sits one of archaeology's strangest unexplained objects. A massive green stone weighing 2,200 pounds. The block, believed made of nephrite or serpentinite, sits alone inside the remains of the city's great temple. No inscriptions, no carvings, and no clear explanation for why it was placed there. Archaeologists have studied it for years, but its exact purpose remains unknown. Some researchers believe it may have had ceremonial or religious significance. Others think it could simply have been an important or valuable object brought into the temple complex for reasons now lost to history. What makes the stone even stranger is how unusual it looks compared to the surrounding ruins, which are mostly made of limestone. Today, locals sometimes call it the wish stone, and many visitors still touch it believing it holds special energy or meaning. But after thousands of years, nobody truly knows why it was brought there, or what the Hittites intended it to be. Late at night, a homeowner captured something creepy outside their desert house on a security camera. A faint light appeared near the gate. Slowly, it began to take shape, forming the outline of a person. You could make out legs pacing back and forth. It seemed to move deliberately, and then, just as suddenly, it vanished. The homeowner likes to believe it could be a guardian spirit watching over the home. Others think it's just a camera playing tricks, but to me, that seems hard to believe. A couple was driving home late one night in Arizona after an evening out when something unusual caught their attention. Above the neighborhood, two strange objects hovered in the dark sky. They quickly pulled out their phone and started recording.
Daddy? Is that alien?
Over here.
The objects were circular, with lights glowing evenly along their edges. They didn't move like drones or helicopters. There was no sound of engines. A man was visiting the Great Pyramid of Giza when he noticed a strange object hovering above the area. According to the man, it made no real noise aside from a faint humming sound. He quickly started recording and later posted the footage online.
Okay, this is unbelievable.
Some people believed it could be something extraterrestrial, especially since the pyramids have been connected to UFO theories for years. Others thought it was more likely just a balloon, drone, or editing trick. And honestly, if it really was something unusual, wouldn't many more visitors have recorded or reported it too? A group of men were out in a desert area late at night for unknown reasons when they captured this clip. A covering lay flat over a patch of earth. When they lifted it, they found a deep hole filled with burning candles, and sitting right beside it, a person. The video ends right there without any explanation or context, leaving the entire clip a mystery. A man named Glenn from Michigan reviewed his home security footage in 2018 after an alert was triggered outside his house while he and his wife were inside. When they checked the recording, a single frame showed a dark, strange silhouette hovering above their car near the house. The shape looked unnatural, not clearly matching a person or an animal, and didn't resemble a typical motion-triggered false alarm. To me, it kind of has an angel shape. Maybe a guardian angel protecting them while driving. In Coober Pedy, Australia, thousands of people live underground to escape extreme desert heat. The town sits in one of the hottest regions on Earth, where surface temperatures can rise above 50 degrees Celsius. Because of this, homes, shops, churches, and even hotels were built directly into the rock below ground. Inside these underground spaces, temperatures stay stable and cool throughout the year, making daily life possible in conditions that would otherwise be unbearable above the surface. The settlement has also developed around opal mining, with many of the underground homes originally carved out as part of mining work before being expanded into living spaces. Above ground, the landscape appears dry, harsh, and almost unlivable, but just below the surface, an entire community continues life. A man was driving through the Navajo reservation when he noticed a strange formation on the side of a mountain. It was a perfectly circular crater carved into the rocky surface, with a shape that looked too precise to be natural erosion. The unusual cemetery led some to suggest it could be a possible UFO landing site left behind by an unidentified craft. Others disagreed and suggested it might be a sinkhole or natural collapse, though the location made that explanation harder to understand, since sinkholes typically form on flatter ground. With no confirmed evidence or investigation, the origin of the formation remains unknown. Richard DeCipio was visiting Utah near Capitol Reef National Park when he was last seen at a hotel in Torrey over the weekend. The 77-year-old was believed to have been hiking in the Chimney Rock area sometime between Saturday and Monday. At first, there was little reason for concern. But as time passed, nobody could locate him. The rugged landscape surrounding Capitol Reef is known for its steep terrain, rocky canyons, and vast remote areas where a person can quickly find themselves in trouble. When Richard failed to return, multiple agencies launched a coordinated search effort. National Park Service personnel were joined by teams from the Bureau of Land Management, along with deputies from Wayne and Sevier counties. Despite those efforts, no immediate trace of him was found. At the time of these reports, the search was still ongoing. If you're in the area or have any information about Richard DeCipio's whereabouts, authorities ask that you contact the Wayne County Sheriff's Office at 1-800-356-8757. Hopefully, he is found safe and reunited with his loved ones soon. Reddit user Whole Negotiation 1843 posted an image of an 8,000-year-old cave painting discovered in Peru. The painting appears to show a large creature being hunted by multiple people armed with shields and weapons, but its shape doesn't clearly match any familiar animal. Some suggested it could simply be a poorly drawn llama. Others pointed out that llamas don't have long tails like that, and you probably wouldn't need 9 hunters to take one down. One theory mentioned the macrauchina, a prehistoric South American mammal believed to have gone extinct thousands of years ago. That led some people to wonder whether small populations may have survived long enough for humans to encounter, and possibly paint them. Others believe the strange proportions point to something far more unusual. Could ancient humans have encountered a creature science hasn't fully accounted for, or is it simply an 8,000-year-old bad drawing? A group of women standing on top of a mountain noticed 3 glowing orbs hovering in perfect formation. Then one disappeared, then another, then the last one vanished, gone without a trace.
Now it just disappeared.
Were they drones, military technology, or something else entirely? A person came across this strange creature in the desert. After some research, it was identified as the meloid beetle larva. It begins life as something called a triangulin, a tiny, highly active creature with one goal. It climbs flowers and waits. When a bee passes, it latches on and hitches a ride directly into the nest. But some groups go even further. They cluster together and mimic the appearance and scent of a female bee, tricking male bees into carrying them straight to where they need to go. Once inside the nest, they transform. They become soft and slow, and begin feeding on bee eggs and stored food. The developing bee dies. The larva keeps feeding until it's fully grown, then leaves the empty nest behind as an adult blister beetle. The unsettling part isn't just what it does, it's how calculated it all seems for something that fits on the tip of your finger. And now, let's watch some more desert encounters.